Welcome to the latest installment of the Run to Daylight Study Hall, Best Ball Study Hall, where we study what we're going to study anyway, and we bring you along for the ride if you're interested. And, we are going to try and be better than we were last year. My guest this time, and he'll be doing all the shows for the NFC, is Jared Smola, also of Draftsharks. Jared, welcome.
Yeah, Todd, thanks for having us. Thanks for doing this with, the Draftsharks guys. We were talking before we went live that, this is stuff I'd be doing anyways around this time of year. I'm going to start 2022 projections next week, going team by team, projecting every fantasy relevant player. So this is, kind of the stuff I'd be doing to lay the groundwork before starting projections for this coming season.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the purpose of this is, right? It's to set a baseline. And then I'd love to have you back on, and let's do it again. That once you got your first run of projections done, I've started calling it Best Ball Study Hall and Bias podcasts, because I think the biggest enemy of all of us is our biases, right? So you do these projections, let's try and break them, right? Because you're just one person, and a group is better than one person. Let's go through them and say, oh, okay. And 80% of them, we might say, oh, this looks pretty good. This looks right. And some of them you might say, well, I'm going to go take another look at that. That's a fair point. I didn't think of that.
Yep.
And again, what we're trying to do is work together to hit on our biases. And you know what? It's hard not to be moved by other smart people. But if you have a kind of mindset of, I'm gonna be wrong, I just want to be wrong less, and that is kind of rare out there. You get a lot of people with attitudes, and that's like, you can see me get triggered on Twitter sometimes, and 90% of the time I get triggered is by someone who thinks they're so great, because I've been doing this a long time, and I've had a lot of success in fantasy football. And the longer I do it, the more infallible I feel.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up that point, because I know one of the first kind of, big breakthrough articles on Draftsharks, and this is before my time even. This must have been, the site launched in 1999. This must have been one of its first few years, but my boss and the owner of the website,
you were like almost a sperm at that point, right?
Yeah, I was in elementary school. But my boss wrote an article, Lenny, titled "Confessions of a Fantasy Expert," and basically the idea of it was fantasy is about who sucks the least. Like, we all suck at this, but being right. The least wrong is how you win.
How you win.
Fantasy.
Exactly. Yep. And that's the whole point of attacking our biases, working together with other people who have a bit of humility. I want to welcome, I think he might have been one of your Draftshark followers, Jose Pena. Can't wait to listen to the show. Well, we're glad you're here. And if you have any questions, or anything you want to add, or anyone else, or people who follow these shows later, look, this is meant to be interactive. This study hall, the whole concept is, Jared and I are, quote, experts, right? That and a quarter might get you a gumball these days, right? I was just a grinder, and I decided to do content. So come along, share your opinions, and if they're really bad, we'll mock you. And if not, we'll, consider them. And I'm going to share the screen now, and we're going to do the NFC East today.
I'm no expert, by the way. I might consider myself an analyst, but I'm just really fortunate enough to have to be blessed with the opportunity to spend 50 to 60 hours per week on fantasy football. I'm sure a lot of people would like that, but that's just that's the only thing that separates me from anyone else.
I'm too old for that. I just don't have that in me. I did when I was your age. I don't anymore. But you learn some tricks along the way. But it's, again, like you said, I am going to be doing this anyway, or I should be doing this anyway. I might not, but I should be doing this anyway. And rather than trying, I'm just over trying to quote create content. So this was a way for me to still have a podcast without me actually doing anything. No, just kidding. All right, so let's look first. And can you see the screen pretty well?
Yeah, I can.
All right, so let's get to the Cowboys. They won the NFC East with a 12-5 record. Dan Quinn looks like he'll be leaving, and Byron Leftwich. Kellen Moore interviewed, but it doesn't look like he'll be leaving now. Let's start with Dak Prescott. Dak had a 68.8% completion percentage, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, only 1.7% interception rate. I mean, if you just looked at Twitter, Jared, you'd be convinced that Dak sucked. And these stats are, yes, he didn't look as confident as he had in the past. Yeah. But, I mean, these are some really good stats.
They are. I guess I'm kind of with the Twitter mob that the Cowboys offense felt disappointing to me for a lot of the season. To me, Dak's season, you can break it down to pre-calf injury and post-calf injury. I dug into these numbers earlier today, but before that calf injury, he averaged 300 yards and 2.7 touchdowns per game on a 73% completion rate. That completion rate dropped to 66% after the calf injury, and he averaged just 264 yards and 2.1 touchdowns per game. So I don't know how much of that we blame on the calf for the entire season. I got to think he was at or close to 100%, late in the season, and the offense was still sort of up and down. But I don't know. Again, I think there's more to unlock with this offense than what we saw last year with all the talent they have. And there, some of these guys are free agents. We can talk about that, but it's still going to be a pretty loaded offense.
Yeah, but my point is that those stats are better than what you would have guessed. And they're, if you, let's see, as far as fantasy points, 337. So
yeah, he finished like quarterback 6 or 7 in most scoring formats.
Yeah. But I don't know if these are correct, but the point is he's being drafted now. Wow. Look at Justin Herbert going 3rd here. Joe Burrow 4th. Yeah, I did my first FFPC today, 28 round. Not that I wanted to draft this early, but in fact, I'll pull that up so you can take a look at that too.
Is this the early tournament?
No, this is the hard way. So you've got Scoundrel, Billy Musio, Noah Rudell, me, Austin Martin, JD from Goat District, Davis Maddock, Abib, who's 2-time Football Guys champion, Theo Greminger, Dan Williamson, G-Dub, and Nelson Souza. So it's a pretty damn good room.
Yep.
Right? And when you look at where Dak went, he didn't go until the 8th round as quarterback 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7. Yep.
So that's what I mean. I just think that there's a chance you're going to get a discount on him. And I think your point about him, the offense looking like it should have been better at times, means to me that there's the upside that I'm looking for next year. And a lot of times you find when guys come off really major injuries, and he had a really major injury, there's room for growth.
Yeah. Yeah. His rushing numbers were down considerably last year too. Career
and they might
low.
not come back.
They might not, but like you said, he was also
might not come back because of he just doesn't want to run after the injury.
That could be. I think
that might persist. I would guess.
Maybe. He's still in his 20s. Again, he had the calf injury this season, which I got to think limited that. I think it'll bounce back a little bit. Maybe not to he had a few 6 touchdown seasons, 6 rushing touchdowns. I think that's probably not going to come back. But I would expect the rushing production to bounce back at least a little in 2022.
I would guess that rushing touchdowns could come back more than
the yards.
The yards, because it's worth it more to run when you can get a touchdown. All right, so let's look at him versus his previous years. 68% completion percentage. He was right around that before the injury. 37-10, 9 before the injury. So, almost choked on a pretzel.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me there is the touchdown rate.
Yeah.
Was that 6.2% career high. So league average touchdown rate is around 4.6, 4.7%, which is kind of where he was hovering.
So that could
prior
regress
to this past year. I think it'll regress a bit. He should also be a above average touchdown rate guy though, just with the weapons he has. So I'd like, if I'm going to project him for 2022, I'd put him somewhere between like 5 and 5.5.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and all right. So that's Dak. And then let's go and look at the next category, which is attempts. So Zeke basically had 2-1 attempts. Yep. Not even 2-1, less than 2-1, and he was hurt. But see, and this is something that I mentioned the other day. Something I don't like. What I like to do is I like to look at the other runners and look at Dak, only 3 yards. When he does have to run, it looks more like he's running because he's under heavy pressure and not getting very far. When you average 3 yards per carry.
Like I said, I mean, his rushing stuff was down across the board this past season. Yeah. So I think that's a big question. Do we expect that to come back or not this coming year?
Yep. So Zeke averaged a respectable 4.2, but when your backup is at 5.5 per carry, I understand some of that could have been big plays that Zeke just didn't get anymore. Targets, Zeke got 6. See, this is the part of the Zeke's game. And Pollard had, so they did throw to the running backs a lot more.
Yep.
But when you look at ADP, where's Zeke going now? He's still going in the first 3 rounds on Underdog, and when you look at our draft, and he ended up at the end of, where did he end up? And Davis wasn't happy that he took him, so he could have kept falling. Yeah, and this was an accident. I know that from our chat. So I think in sharp rooms you're going to see Zeke fall, and I think the tendency is going to be to want to quote take the value. But I mean, there's no guarantee that they're going to still keep forcing him the ball.
Yeah, that to me is the biggest question with the Cowboys is what this backfield split looks like. If you look at any metric, and you pointed to the yards per carry, if you look at Pro Football Focus rushing grade or missed tackles forced per attempt or yards after contact per attempt, even in the passing game, Tony Pollard was more efficient than Zeke Elliott this past season. And to me, Pollard is still probably trending up, and Zeke is probably trending down. He's 26 right now. He'll turn 27 in July, which, for some running backs is like peak age. Like 26, 27 tends to be like peak age for running backs. But Zeke came into the league so young. He has so many touches on his resume. I think he's well past his peak.
I agree. The only issue is, and let's look over here. Can you see this?
Yep.
They're 21 million over the cap.
Yep.
And then you go into it and you look at Zeke and it's 30 million in dead cap. They can't afford to cut him.
Right.
So he's going to be there. Right. So I think, 4th, 5th round, taking a little bit of Zeke isn't the end of the world. But if you look at our draft, Noah, who is from Texas and seems to always have a pretty good sense of things, took Pollard in the 8th round, which is a little earlier than where he went, and then he took Hunt, who I kind of wanted one pick in front of me.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, Pollard was going in like the 9th or 10th last year, right?
Well, he started out right around here in the 8th, 9th with the assumption that they would, the assumption of rational coaching. And then as we got closer to the season, we realized, not we, I mean, because I didn't draft him much in the 8th, 9th round. Reality kind of just hit everyone in the face again like a dead fish, that Mike McCarthy was not just going to turn and give Pollard a 50-50 split. So he fell back to like the 10th, 11th round. And I'm much more familiar with FFPC, so I'm talking FFPC.
Yeah, assumption of rational coaching is going to be the question here again too, because I think it should be at least a 50-50 split if the best players are playing in Dallas, but that's not always the case. And Zeke's contract is going to mean something, I think, to that team. So I think it's likely he gets more work than he should this coming season. Just exactly what that split is going to be is going to be a big question to answer. But I did not take hardly any Tony Pollard this past season, but if he's going in the 8th round this offseason, I'm going to be taking shots on him there because worst case, and we said this last year, worst case, you're getting an elite handcuff. He's going to be a top 5 running back if Zeke misses time. Even if he gets the type of workload he got this past season, what did he end up with this past season as far as carries and catches?
All right, so here's, and I was just going to it anyway.
Yep.
So one thing I do like is he only got 2 touchdowns to Zeke's 10. Yep. And that could regress. Touchdowns are the thing that can regress in one direction more than the other. But he had 100. See, I like my 8th round guys, 8th, 9th, 10th round guy. I like them to get 150 carries. I feel like if you can get 150 carries and 50 targets, you've got a pretty nice floor somewhere in that 8th to 10th round. Right. And then you have that upside in case the other guy gets hurt or the light bulb finally goes on for their coaches. So my only question, again, we're talking pre-draft. See, I would be much more likely to take Pollard in a season-long league than I would be in a best ball in the 8th, 9th round because of, it's just a little more scary for me in best ball.
See, I was almost thinking the opposite because in season long, if Zeke's healthy and you're projecting Pollard for 8 carries and 3 targets per game, it's kind of tough to throw him in a starting lineup. Whereas in best ball, if he breaks off a long run or scores a touchdown on those touches, he's going to start for you. But I don't know, again, I mean, like you said, I do think.
And I agree with that in the 10th round. In the 8th round, I want a guy who let's look in the 8th round. All right. So, I mean, this is obviously point and a half per tight end. I don't like Knox that early. I think Freiermuth was right around where I would have taken him. Pollard. I took Kadarius Toney. I had a few guys. One of the guys that I liked about as much was Juju, and I got him on the way back.
Yep.
So I just feel like these guys are going to be on the field, right? And that I can find someone with almost as much of a floor and maybe not quite as much of a ceiling at the running back position a couple rounds later. So that's kind of my take on it here. But I'm open to your thoughts.
Well, it's funny. The guy that that's right below Pollard on that draft board, Kareem Hunt, is basically the same guy where you're going to get 8 to 14 touches per game, and then if the starter goes down, he's a top 5 back. Now, Chubb is less likely to hit the wall as Zeke is this coming season, so I probably do prefer Pollard over Hunt at this point. But I think they're pretty similar guys, and I do think those are the type of guys you should be targeting in that range of the draft, like you said.
Interesting to me is Hunt the last 2 years has gone in the 6th round, and he's paid off with, when he's been healthy, he's paid that off, right? I mean, he hasn't blown the doors off, but he had a pretty good win rate 2 years ago. And obviously with him missing so many games this year, it's going to be hard to use his win rate and as a goal. But, and it's just funny because, you make a point, you're not that wrong or wrong at all. But really, when I look at that, my first instinct is, I'm getting a 3 or 4 round discount on Hunt from last year, where Pollard's going a round or 2 earlier than he did.
Yep.
But that's what I mean by biases. That's my bias. That's why it's good we kind of look into this and bounce these ideas off, because they are probably a lot closer in value than you would think.
Yeah, and again, this is where it's nice to actually sit down and do projections. But just like off the top of my head, like I think when Chubb and Zeke are healthy, I'd be projecting Hunt and Pollard for pretty similar workloads. So I think they should be going in the same area of drafts.
The only difference is that I could clearly see Dallas taking a third round running back, where I don't think the Browns will.
I don't think either team will. I think the amount of money Dallas has tied up in Zeke, and then having Pollard there, I'd be surprised if they spent more than a 6th or 7th round pick on a running back.
Yeah, but they've got less holes to fill, I think. And
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. It's a good roster for sure.
I like the guy that I think Jerry tends to love his Texas boys, Spiller. I don't know if you've watched any of his tape. He's electric.
No, yeah, you're ahead of me on the college guys. I haven't watched any of them.
I've only watched a few.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a decent amount of college football during the season, but I haven't really dug into any of those guys yet.
And you notice in my draft, I took that, even though it was looks like it was an accident, it wasn't. It was from a queue.
Yep.
Overnight, and I've got Kenneth Walker. I like him. I think he's just as good as the 2 other ones that are going earlier in Spiller and Hall.
Brees Hall,
from my tape watching. All right, so let's look at the receivers. And everyone hates CeeDee Lamb now. That's the latest. This doesn't want to refresh.
Yeah, so Lamb finished 24th among wideouts in PPR points per game. I was up from 35th as a rookie. He improved his efficiency stuff across the board. Catch rate, yards per catch, yards per target were all up. He was good in yards per route run, which I think is an important metric to look at. My only knock against Lamb is he only saw a 20% target share, and that's just not alpha stuff. And I think in year 2 Lamb's target share as a rookie was 17.5%, so it did climb 2.5 percentage points, which is good. And I think in year 3 he should still be on the ascent. I just would have liked to have seen, especially with all the time that Cooper missed, I would have liked to have seen Lamb, command a bigger piece of that pie.
I agree 100%. And Jerry already took a shot at Amari. So let's check out Amari's. He could get out from underneath Amari. And that might that right. If you're drafting early, that's where Lamb gets very sneaky, because if there's only $6 million in dead cap for Cooper, and although
they also have Michael Gallup, who's going to be a free agent, and Dalton,
but
Schultz.
He's not in these numbers,
right?
Michael Gallup.
I'm just saying. They have to bring Cooper or Gallup back. I don't think they can let both those guys go.
Probably, but look, I mean, Dak mixed it up. The one place where I thought that Dak really was worse was, from daily fantasy, those games where Dallas would fall behind with their bad defense. Mm-hmm. And then Dak was just like, would go absolutely ballistic. There was like 4 or 5 games like that, and he just never seemed to be able to kick it into that extra gear. The whole offense seemed to struggle to do that. Let's look at their free agents. So by position, Cedric Wilson, Gallup, and Noah Brown
Yeah.
are all free agents, and Malik Turner. So this is a team that I would expect to, well, they can't really do much in free agent, and Dalton Schultz.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just saw today a report that they might franchise tag Dalton Schultz, but that's a big one because my biggest single player mistake in drafts this past year was I had a ton of Blake Jarvin and hardly any Dalton Schultz. And I was pretty good about diversifying in those type of situations and for most spots, but for whatever reason, I just kept drafting Blake Jarvin and not drafting
that's
Schultz.
the biases that we talk about.
Yeah, and if I just mixed that up and had more Schultz, I would have had a much better season.
Yeah, and I had partners who liked Schultz more than I did, and I let them draft him. I just didn't see it, and I should have, because Schultz played well. It's going to be very, they're going to have, we find teams find their way out of cap hell. And, look, they just re-signed Dak. Dak has got a $34 million hit. DeMarcus Lawrence, a $27 million. Amari, 22. So I think, and Zach Martin, a 20.
Yeah.
I think all 5 or 6 of these top guys are likely to be re-signed to cap-friendly deals to help them get under.
And look who else is in the top 10 in cap hit down there. Blake Jarvin. That's one of the reasons I was drafting him. Yeah, they gave him a big contract. I think it was last offseason, I want to say. So that was one of the reasons I was drafting him, is they seemed to commit to him as their guy. And he was obviously coming off the ACL and all that, which probably played a part in it. But so yeah, I don't know. So do they want to sign Schultz to a big deal after giving Jarvin all that money? I don't know. I guess Jarvin's a guy in these early drafts I'm going to be taking super late, probably my last pick, just in case Schultz leaves and then Jarvin takes back over as the starter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see them letting Schultz get out. But 78 receptions at 10.4. I mean, that's about as good as it gets for a guy of Schultz's ability.
Yeah, he was great. Dak obviously came to trust him. If we look at like yards per route run,
he's
Schultz
open.
Schultz was 16th among 35 qualifying tight ends in yards per route run. I think that kind of speaks to his talent level. Like he's not an elite guy, but
he's that next level down.
Yes, exactly. And when you have defenses paying attention to CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, Schultz is kind of an afterthought.
And I think if he ends up anywhere else, I'll be way less interested in him.
Me too.
Guys like Schultz who are mediocre talents. Let's call it the Austin Hooper syndrome.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. He found a quarterback that liked him, used him. He was the third read. So I think we're pretty good on Dallas.
Yep.
Well, Jose mentioned that it hurts Lamb. I feel like, and he also wrote too many targets to feed. Yes, but look, that's good offense. It's not great for fantasy, but it's good offense. But I think people, let's look really quick at CeeDee Lamb's ADP. Yeah, I mean, he's still going at the end of the second round.
Yeah, so that's probably still too high. I wasn't drafting him last year at ADP.
I had some when he was back in the third, and when he moved up to the second, he became a fade for me.
Yeah, and my only knock against him was volume. I didn't think he was going to get the volume with all those other mouths to feed in Dallas, and that turned out to be the right call.
Very, very right call. All right, so we spent a lot of time on Dallas, and I don't mind, because they are the only team in the division that you can really feel good about scoring a lot of fantasy points.
Yep.
Let's move to the second place team. The site decides to move slow today. The Eagles were 9-8 after a bad start. And they started running the ball a lot more towards the end to kind of hide Jalen Hurts. I put Jalen Hurts, and look, he had a 61% completion percentage, but Gardner Minshew had a 68%. I mean, Jalen Hurts just misses people, and it's going to continue to hold the receivers up. But here's the thing with Jalen Hurts: you made the playoff with the guy, and the coach has already come out and said that he is going to be the quarterback next year. Right. I put him in the kind of the Kirk Cousins. Who is the other guy that everyone wants to replace at quarterback?
It's like half the league, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I'm talking Hurts,
Jared Goff,
Cousins. Well, Goff is a guy that you definitely have to.
Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield.
The third one's Baker.
Baker, yeah.
Right, like everyone says they want to replace those guys, and what you find is it's just not that easy to do. Right, it's easier to say. On Twitter, people get in their cups and they say, "Oh, yeah, get rid of them," and it's like, well, a guy who is going to be, somewhere between the 10th and 20th best quarterback, if you're a team that with 9 wins, it's really hard to find another quarterback. I don't think Gardner Minshew is the answer.
No, so to me, Hurts right now, I think he's like a league average passer. He can still get better. He's heading into his 3rd season. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 5, even a top 10 passer, but he can still make, I think, small improvements as a passer.
Sure, absolutely.
But if he's a league average passer and he's also one of the 5 best running quarterbacks in the NFL, he could be a top 10 NFL passer. And then for our purposes, for fantasy, like with the rushing stuff, Hurts led all quarterbacks in carries, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns this past season. And he finished quarterback 10 in points per game, fantasy points per game because of that. And that's not going to change if he remains our starter. So to me, he's a guy I'll be targeting in these early drafts. The one thing I know the front office said that they're committed to Hurts as their guy. They said that doesn't guarantee anything. The Eagles have 3. No. The Eagles have 3 first-round picks this spring. So
they want Watson if they can get him.
They want Watson, and if they want to make a move for one of these rookies, if they fall in love with a guy, they can move up to get one of them. So, Hurts is not guaranteed the starting job. I think it's likely he's their 2022 starter, and if he is, I think he's a pretty easy top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah. I don't know that you're getting a discount on him yet, and
what's his ADP at?
I'll give that to you in a sec. There's $15 million in cap overall. Right now, he is going at quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
That's discounted to me. I'd take him.
Yeah,
a few spots higher.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Would you take him over Trey Lance? Absolutely. Would you take him over Stafford?
I would, and I take him over Brady too, just with the risk that Brady retires.
Yeah, and I think that I think but there's also a risk that Hurts isn't the quarterback next year, so that kind of balances to me. Mm-hmm. The issue for me with Hurts is that they went so run heavy with him. I need to find a site that gives me fantasy points by week. Do you know of one? I used to get it. I used to get it from. My fantasy league. I know my fantasy league has it, but I don't have any leagues on there pretty much anymore that have normal PPR scoring, so it's hard.
Right. Yeah. I know FF Today has pretty good player pages that'll show you fantasy points per week.
Yeah, but I want a screen of all the quarterbacks, all the running. Here, let me show you what my fantasy league has.
I know Hurts.
I should probably just create a league
Right.
that has, the scoring that I want.
Yep. I know
Um,
one of the notes I jotted down about Hurts was he finished as a top 13 fantasy quarterback in 12 of his 15 games. So he was really consistent. He didn't really kill you very often. Again, I think that goes back to the rushing. If you're going to run for 50 to 60 yards a game, it's kind of tough to really bust.
so this is what you get with my fantasy league,
Oh
and
yeah,
can
yep.
you see it?
Mm-hmm.
And so you go to quarterback, and then you can just quick. Now, this is a best ball league that I commish,
Yep.
and unfortunately, it's meant to make up for a lot of the. So where is Hertz? Yeah, he came in 7th in fantasy points per game in mine, and mine is more set up so that if you throw a lot of turnovers, you're going to get smacked. You get -6 for pick sixes.
Yep. He didn't turn it over much, I don't believe, did he?
No,
Yeah,
no,
he
it
had
doesn't.
9 interceptions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
He's again, to me, the only risk with Hurts taking him at quarterback 12 is that he's not their starter, and I think there's like a 10% chance that he's not their starter next year.
yeah, and in general, I don't draft more than 15% of any quarterback.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard for them to separate. So when you look at his completion percentage went from 52 in 4 games, but still 52 to 61. You probably heard me talk on the last pod about this. I've done a lot of studying on this. You tend to get these inaccurate in general. Rookie quarterbacks tend to have a nice bump the second year, and then the third year you get like an incremental. So it wouldn't shock me to see him at 63% next year, which is, for a guy who runs as often as he does, is pretty good.
And you look at the yards per attempt numbers are pretty solid. In the low 7s. That's kind of like league average. So again, if he can just be an average passer, then give us that rushing production, you're in business.
Attempts per game. I got to refresh this site before I do a pod next time.
Is that nine carries per game?
9 rushes per game.
It's awesome.
Scott 5, Miles Sanders 11, Jordan Howard 12.
Sanders is the guy. What's Sanders ADP right now? I think he's going to be undervalued. Early in the year when he was healthy, that's when they were going pass heavy, and we were all sort of frustrated with how little work he was getting on the ground.
Yeah, he's going in the 79th pick.
Yeah, I like Sanders a lot right now.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah, and then the second half of the year, he was dealing with a couple different injuries. I think it was the ankle injury. Then he had the wrist injury or hand injury, something kept him out late. But if you look at his 4 healthy games late in the season, he had 16, 9, 24, and 18 carries.
The only thing is, and this is Nick Sirianni, like Gainwell.
Yeah.
Early in the year, he didn't give the ball to Sanders enough, and he was giving Gainwell a lot of carries and time on the field. Then Sanders gets hurt, and Gainwell doesn't play. I don't like. I mean, at his ADP, there's nothing to not like.
Yep.
But I'm also not going to accumulate a ton of Sanders there because I can't trust the rational coaching.
Yeah, I think Sirianni has roles for all of his backs, and like the reason Gainwell's role didn't grow when Sanders got hurt was because they're not playing the same role.
It went down. It wasn't that it didn't go up; it went down.
Yeah, and maybe that's like a rookie thing. Maybe he was making mistakes, and they didn't want to trust him and that type of stuff. But I mean, it's going to be a committee in Philly. I'm not saying Sanders is going to get 300 carries and that he should be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I think he should be going.
But he could. Right, there is that chance.
Yeah, there's that chance. But again, I expect Sirianni to keep it committee. So I think Sanders should be going like the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah, and that's right where I would consider him. In our hardway draft, I think he went right here at the 6-1.
Yeah, that's a
So
good spot for him.
5-12, 6-1.
Yep.
And that's a good value. I took Amari before, and if he had made it back, I would have taken him.
Right.
What do you think of Amari in the 5th round? End of the 5th.
Feels about right for him. You mentioned the fact that maybe he's a cut candidate, which I think would probably hurt his stock. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a chance he goes somewhere where he's the true number 1 guy. But I think staying in Dallas would be the best case for him. And I think, 4th, 5th round is kind of where I'd be looking at Cooper
Yeah,
right
I
now.
thought that was pretty good value.
Yeah, it's solid.
I mean, he wasn't the guy I wanted. Who was the guy I wanted?
Lockett, maybe?
No.
Lockett. Lockett's going to be undervalued again for the 3rd straight season.
I was considering him when I took DJ Moore in the 4th. I was torn between DJ Moore and Terry McLaurin, and I just think DJ Moore has a better floor, and I think they both have pretty good ceilings if they can get a good quarterback.
Yeah, Moore is the new Allen Robinson, where you just hope he doesn't go his entire career with crappy quarterback play.
Yep. As far as receiving, it's really hard to get too excited about anyone. I think you could get a bump from Devonta Smith here too. The only guy that I'm pretty interested in is Dallas Goedert. 76 targets, but definitely started seeing more action once Zach Ertz was traded. But you would really like to see him get over what he could do with 120 targets if he could get it.
And that's pretty much the pay. Let me pull up my calculator here. If we're talking 17 games, he was on pace for 114 targets. In the games after Zach Ertz was traded, he averaged 6.7 targets in the games after Zach Ertz was traded. Goddard's scoring average in those 10 games would have made him tight end 5 in PPR points per game. I think that's kind of where he should be going.
And he's going as number 7, but that's a little misleading because he's going, 13 a full round, so.
I might take him over Hawkinson. And I think he, we're at worst, he should be going, right there with Hawkinson and well ahead of those, next guys, the Dawson Knox, the Gronks, the Schultzes.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone's drafting Gronk that early.
Right.
He could easily retire, and he could easily play and not be, do what he did this year, miss half the season.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think there's anything else to really go into here. I do think that they are going to look to get more talent on this offense.
Yes, they have to add a receiver for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, they have those 3 first-round picks, so I would expect one of those to be used on one of these first-round wideouts.
Yeah,
which would be the 3rd straight year.
Those
they take a first-round wideout.
Or trade down and get, I wouldn't be shocked for them to add 2, 3 during the draft. The Washington football team is next. I'm starting to fade a little bit. It was a long day.
I'll carry you.
Thanks. And it's just kind of annoying that everything's moving kind of slow on my updates. All right, so what the heck? It's like my internet.
Too many tabs.
Normally it doesn't matter. The only problem is if I bounce out, I lose.
Right, everything.
Yeah. All right.
There we are.
Well, who knows who's going to be the quarterback? I think Taylor, those who wanted to make Taylor Heineke an option, he really isn't. Fitz
He's a
is
backup.
39. Yeah, he's a backup. He's a good backup.
Yep.
He's an above average backup, but they don't have a quarterback on this roster. I could see Kirk Cousins being of interest to come back. There's, he's going to end up somewhere, and he's going to be an upgrade in most of the places he would go. He's limited. All right, so let's not spend time on a quarterback that we're not even going to see. Antonio Gibson, you finally have J.D. McKissick leaving, most likely.
Hopefully, yeah.
McKissick is a free agent. Fitzpatrick, Kyle Allen, and cap-wise, Washington's in good shape. So they should get some advantages here. Hopefully you get Curtis Samuel back next year.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that I think could be very good if they get an answer at quarterback, because they have some nice weapons on offense and they have plenty of talent on defense.
Yeah, when you look at our draft,
where'd Gibson go?
My memory is he went right in the
third round.
I was dying for him to make it to me at 3-4. I was not happy here. I mean, there was just, I didn't want. I could have taken Darren Waller or Keenan. Mm-hmm. Nobody. There was just nobody, and that's what you find a lot in these early drafts. There's just nobody you really want. So I took Aaron Jones. But Gibson,
if you had known Waller was going to be there in the third, would you have taken a running back in the second?
No.
You like Pitts that much?
I think it is a 1.5 PPR. The only guy I would have taken instead might have been Diggs.
Sure.
I think Swift, who was one of my favorite players last year, I think that's a little early for him. I think he's going to still split things.
Yeah, I would take Gibson ahead of Swift right now.
You know what? I would have been comfortable taking Gibson here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's kind of
hindsight being 2020. I just wanted Pitts, and when Andrews went one pick before him, I just decided to do it, right? And I'm not going to be doing a lot of drafting. I did this because all the guys got together.
Yep.
I really want to do more studying and less drafting early. I say that every year, and then once I do my first draft, I get addicted.
Drafting is studying in a lot of ways, right? I mean, kind of makes you dig
it is,
players.
But you can go through. Let's see what Jose said. Gibson would be a fade for anyone next year in round 1 or 2. No, I think if anything, he had a good year. And there's a lot more opportunity there with McKissick leaving. He's still got 42 receptions on 52 targets at 7 yards.
And he played almost the entire season with that stress fracture in his shin.
Yeah.
So
I love Gibson at the end of the second.
Yeah, I think mid-second is kind of where he probably should be going.
Yeah, and I felt like, now I do like Jared Patterson. I think Jared Patterson will be involved, but how much, who knows? And I don't think they are going to feel the need to really bring in somebody. I could see them re-signing McKissick,
right?
But
that'll tell us a lot. That'll tell us a lot what they do at running back, because when McKissick was healthy, Gibson was still kind of disappointing as far as his passing game usage went. It was when McKissick missed some time, he had the concussion. That's when Gibson started to have the 5, 6, 7 target games. So if they bring back McKissick, then I would again expect Gibson to not see a ton of passing game volume. But if they let McKissick walk and don't add anything, I think that'll be the signal that they're ready to give Gibson more in the passing game.
Yep. and a lot of times the phrase post hype. Gibson was the guy everyone was hyping. A lot of the real Sharks were taking him at the end of the first, beginning of the second, at different points last year. And, they were assuming that he would take over, and he didn't. And I don't like drafting to someone's ceiling, but I feel like end of the second, I don't expect to see him at the end of the second all year. I just don't.
End of the second is like drafting him at his floor almost, because we know he's going to get 250 carries or so.
Terry McLaurin, 130 targets. I mean, he's a guy who should be getting 170, but he didn't have a quarterback who could get him the ball. 13.7 per reception is just criminal for him. And what did he have last year?
It's actually up from the previous year.
Yes. Yeah, but it was the rookie year. He had 15.8.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's capable of being a 15 yards per catch guy.
Absolutely.
Washington's pass volume as a whole was down last year from 2020. If you look at, McLaurin's targets were down a little, I think. His target share was basically in line. It was around like 24%, which is a fine number. But Washington just didn't throw it as much last year as he did the previous year. To me, with McLaurin, it's just what do they do at quarterback? If they were to get someone like Kirk Cousins, I think we've seen Cousins support top 5 fantasy wideouts. Yeah. I think if they could just get someone at that level, that we could finally, see McLaurin have that top 12 fantasy.
And the end of the 4th round is, to me, he's a very, like, if I color coded these by how much I like them based on where I took them, where they went, and blue was the best color, I'd put McLaurin blue. I think there's a lot of nice upsides still at the end of the 4th round.
DJ Moore and McLaurin are similar, right? Like we like the talent.
Oh, it was a toss-up for me.
Yeah, they're the top. I mean, it's just quarterbacks. That's the only question.
I mean, it was a toss-up for me. And hindsight being 2020, I had McCaffrey. I probably should have went McLaurin over DJ Moore. But again, I'm not putting as much into this draft as I probably should.
Sure.
I don't think there's anyone else.
I mean, we have Logan Thomas, who's coming off the torn ACL, so that'll be something to watch. And I think Curtis Samuel is someone, assuming he's going to be super cheap, that I'd be willing to take shots on. It was just a completely lost season with his injuries. They gave him a big contract in free agency last offseason. I think they had big plans for him. So if he's kind of flying under the radar going in the 15th round or whatever, I'll definitely take some Samuel.
That's about where I think he's going. Look, he's going pick 160 on Underdog. I mean, Antonio Brown and Cedric Wilson are going ahead of him.
Yeah, see, I think grab Samuel now. I would expect his ADP to climb if we get any reports that he's looking good.
Get him now because you're not going to get him there later. Right, if he's healthy, and if he's not healthy, well, at that ADP, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
All right, We agree.
Agree.
We covered the free agents. Let's finish up with my Giants.
New GM.
He seems pretty good. It looks like they might end up with Dan Quinn. Everyone thinks they're going to get Dable. Or Flores, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's Quinn, and if it is Quinn, I would be pretty disappointed.
Who's going to be running the offense? That's what we want.
Yeah, that's what's going to matter. Yeah. But they are saying the right things, that they're going to really, he said today, I'm going to upgrade the offensive line. So they've got 2 early first-round picks. Unfortunately, cap-wise, they are 28th. They're over the cap right now. And good old Dave Gettleman has some really bad contracts in here. Leonard Williams, $27 million with a third. Bradbury was a good contract, but Gallaudet is just atrocious. Adoree Jackson, 18. I mean, that's just insanity. Blake Martinez was a good.
It's a multi-year rebuild.
Blake, Absolutely. Blake Martinez. Yeah, Sterling Shepard should be cut. If it was me, I would just cut all these bad contracts and just suck for a year. I don't know that they're going to do that. The Giants never. But look at this, Kyle Rudolph, $7 million. Like, who are they? Who are they competing against for Kyle Rudolph? And the Giants always do this, and then they let guys that they should keep go. The one encouraging thing from the Giants is Andrew Thomas played much better in year 2.
Yep.
So it looked like they really blew that with Wirfs and the other guy that got drafted that did really good from that class. But Thomas did pretty well.
Yep.
Tony.
So do you buy that they're going to stick with Daniel Jones this year?
Yeah, I think that part of getting the job as general manager was like, if you tell them the truth about Daniel Jones, you ain't getting the job.
Yeah.
The good news is, if you're going to rebuild, I mean, this is his 4th year.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you have every opportunity to just sit, you give him one more year. And of course, you're going to say he's our guy. We're going to build around him. He certainly was a lot better. I mean, 64% completion percentage. One thing I will tell you about Daniel Jones, he's a turnover machine.
Yeah.
But it happens when, if you get him time to throw, he is Danny Dimes. So hopefully I think his upside is a little better than Kirk Cousins.
I think he's Kirk Cousins that can run a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's always the thing for fantasy. Like he's had some massive fantasy games because of their rushing ability.
Yep.
He hasn't had much of a chance with the offensive line, and they tried to add some weapons for him, and most of those guys were hurt or sucked this past season. So I don't know. I'm not like super optimistic that Jones is going to be an above average NFL starter. But I do think giving him one more year and hoping to, get him behind a better O-line and, maybe Gallaudet does something and maybe Saquon stays healthy next year and just see what Jones can do in a better environment.
I mean, look, 64% completion percentage. The one thing he wasn't getting was touchdowns, right? The interceptions were down. 7 interceptions in 11 games is not terrible. I mean, it's not great.
Right. Super low touchdown rate that I would expect to
regress.
Come up. To regress.
And again, you raise the offensive line play, and the whole offense is going to play better. So I think he's definitely. I mean, I think you have to see what you got still. That being said, if you're sitting there, it was like when Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray. I mean, if you have the opportunity to upgrade, you should.
Right.
But John Merrick came out today and said, we're not trading for Deshaun Watson. Just forget it. It's not happening. Saquon Barkley actually averaged less yards per carry than Devontae Booker. Again, I don't care that much about yards per carry, but I do care how you compete in yards per carry versus other players on your team.
Mm-hmm.
It was his first year back, and then he hurt the ankle.
Right.
But I mean, I just, even looking at his, drafted at the beginning of the 3rd round, so the 25th pick here, and
I like him if he's going at the 2-3 turn. I don't know about you. I mean,
I still wonder. I don't think it's bad. But I don't think it's.
What do you wonder about?
I just don't know that he has that 5th gear anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't know. I thought he was rounding into form off the ACL like right before he hurt that ankle. Like the game before the Cowboys game was. Yeah.
No, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. And our friend Jose. Tony is sleeper for the Giants next year in fantasy. What round would he be drafted? I will say that I drafted him in the 8th round. Do you think that's too early for Kadarius Toney?
I think it's about right, and I think his upside is like a 4th or 5th rounder. I don't know. I mean, he was barely on the field this past season because of injuries and
And that was
other.
concerning because he's smaller.
Right.
And you worry about these small guys, whether they, I've learned with injuries, the big injuries, once they've shown that they're healthy, I don't
Right.
worry about. Those are much more fluky. It's the guys who are always dinged up.
Yep.
And it's one week it's an ankle, next week it's a rib, next week it's his cheekbone, and also I think Kadarius Toney, that is a bit of a wild card as a human being.
Oh, he is. He had off-field stuff coming into the league. He had issues with the Giants.
I'm surprised the Giants took him, to be honest. Yeah. Again, fuck you, Dave Gettleman, and goodbye.
So
and
Gettleman
finally trades down, and passes on Micah Parsons and Slater to do it.
Yeah, Slater looked nice there.
That to me is Dave Gettleman in like a nutshell.
Yep.
Finally decides to play the draft board, probably when he shouldn't. All right, yeah, I think that might have been a little early for Toney, but I like him for best ball because I do think he has spike week potential.
Yeah, so I mean the risks are the injuries and the off-field stuff and the quarterback play and the offense around him, obviously. But I thought he looked awesome when he was healthy, and he commanded targets. He had 9+ targets in 4 of his 7 healthy games last season, and Tony was 11th in yards per route run among 89 qualifying wide receivers. He was 2nd among rookie wide receivers behind only Jamar Chase. So it was Jamar Chase as the most efficient rookie wideout, and then it was Kadarius Toney. So yeah, I think the upside is there, for him to pay off that 8th round price tag and more than pay it off, return a nice profit if he can just stay healthy next year.
I mean, the catch rates on these are just so pitiful. Yep. 58 targets for Slayton, 26 catches, 53 and 36 for Shepard. Where is the catch percentage? All right. So 67% for Shepard, 45% for Slayton, 63% for Ingram, and 68% for Toney.
And some of that's how they're used. Like Toney was used around the line of scrimmage quite a bit.
But
what about Kenny Gallaudet? Is there any?
That's what I'm looking for him.
Is there any buy low?
Yeah, I mean his ADP.
He's got to be cheap.
He's
And he also didn't score a single touchdown last year, which is mostly fluky.
133. So 11th round, I'm definitely willing to take some Kenny Gallaudet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he is worth what the Giants paid him. I don't think he's like a true number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, but they did pay him. They're going to want to get their money's worth. I think he's, if he can stay healthy next year, he's going to get solid volume. And again, he didn't score a touchdown last year. That's going to regress, obviously.
I love this price. I mean, Kenny Gallaudet, I get not wanting to take him in the 8th, 9th round.
Yep.
But, the end of the 11th, 12th round, I mean, for a guy who's going to be on the field all the time, who, has shown that he can play in the league and was going in the 3rd round a couple years ago, in the 4th round last year 6th round last year for a little while before he started dropping. I really like that price on Kenny Gallaudet.
Me too.
All right. Let's see. Evan Ingram is leaving.
I'm done with him. I've tried the past.
I was done with him this year. People would be like, play him in DFS. I'm like, no. 3,500 Ingram. I played him a little bit one week. He sucked. I'm like, all right, that's it. And the frustrating thing is he can go somewhere, and in the right circumstances, he could be let's see what his ADP is.
He'll turn 28 right around the start of this coming season. So I mean, he's still in his prime. He was a freak athlete, a first round pick. I'll be curious to see where he lands.
181 on.
Yes, what is he like? Tight end 20 or something, probably.
Yeah, further 1, 2.
Further, yeah. I mean, shit. I'm gonna be in on Ingram again if he's going that late. If he ends up somewhere decent.
24th tight end. Oh, it says it right here. Tight end 24.
There you go.
That's a no-brainer for me.
Well, I mean, we'll see where he lands and what kind of contract he gets. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably be in.
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly have some.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little surprised Gerald Everett's going that late. Dan Arnold's going ahead of Gerald Everett. Uzoma really. I had a nice amount of Uzoma last year.
Yeah, I'll be off Uzoma if he's going above Everett and Ingram.
Tunyon. I mean, tight end 20 for Robert Tunyon. I mean, he was so hyper touchdown efficient, and then he didn't do much. Chance Rogers isn't there. No, thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tunyon.
No thanks on him. All
right.
Irv Smith's the guy. Irv Smith, I'll be taking plenty of right now while he's cheap.
Gotta love you some. Sorry, I keep slipping down here. Gotta love you some Irv Smith.
Agreed.
All right, I think that's gonna do it. Any questions?
No, that was good. We'll see you for the NFC North we're doing next.
North next, and
cool.
We'll probably get to that sometime this week. We'll let you guys know. And thank you so much for coming and studying with us.